everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice and another drive-in video today. Quick video again about the thing that is on everyone's mind because 80% of the United States is still locked down and in their homes, except for the few essential workers, which in California includes cannabis industry workers like myself. Because today we're talking about how the World Health Organization has basically been revealed to the entire world as a front for the Communist Party of China. And at the same time, I just want to talk about what I love about Catastrophes. There's something about that sweet irony that gets me going in the morning when I see all of the illusions that have held this fake world together just melting and dissolving away like sulfuric acid, it just dissolving all of the nonsense. And at the same time, there's still plenty of it flying around. Nothing can change that. That's a mutable part of the cosmos. But what we'd like is to see actual clarity come through and rationality and effective, productive action in response to accurate information properly processed, right? And I think that the beauty of this, in the internet, that's why I say that this whole thing, I'm still predicting, for the most part, is going to be, already in the rearview mirror by the time July rolls around. Yes, there will probably be lasting repercussions, just biologically speaking, there will probably be a resurgence in the fall, as, Fauci claims and, is a valid statistical argument. But I think once we pass the initial peak, that's when we'll really have a handle on the situation. And it's never going to reach anywhere even close to 100,000. I mean, maybe globally, but at this point, people are also realizing that China's numbers are complete baloney. I mean, everybody who knows anything about China already knew that. They fabricate virtually all of their statistics, from GDP growth to, their banking system and their credit reporting. I mean, so this is just, one more feather on the bird, right? One more scale on the dragon, if you will. And it's ultimately is shocking to the liberal media because they are wannabe communists. They're just pandering to the commies. They're just brainless, really. They're not even effective at being corrupt anymore. They used to be, you had to give them at least one point of credit that they may not be totally incompetent because they're very good at holding on to power and presenting a unified front, as Trump alludes to. That they're good at sticking together if they're not good for much else. But it's all getting revealed right now as just complete nonsense. That the idea that a country of 2 billion people only has a few thousand deaths and they are stacked on top of each other, it doesn't matter if they locked each other down. Again, you realize in the midst of all this that it is the reporting of statistics that matters more than the actual facts on the ground. The way you report statistics and the way you gauge, cases and deaths and how you establish all of these assumptions is your output, right? From global warming to, relativity and the rest of the things we've looked at in this channel. If you goal seek your data, if you build a model that's designed to confirm your worldview, well, don't be surprised when it does. And you have to really check yourself against others. You have to check subjective perception against the others and reach an objective perception. An objective perception is looking like at least 50,000 have died from coronavirus in China, and that China basically just stopped reporting it. And they, through crying racism and helping propagate the liberal media narrative that you are racist if you, take border controls against China or any other country, right? Hug a Chinese person. Before Italy's outbreak and Spain, they had these programs, Hug Me, I'm Not a Virus, of a Chinese person wearing, a mask or a blindfold and a mask, and, all these people go up and hug him, flash pan 2 months later, and basically there's just thousands of people dying in their homes, and basically the entire country is basically spiraling into implosion. And now the entire Eurozone is on the brink and about to be shattered as it reveals the fractures and the stress lines between the different member states. and how Germany basically has taken over, right? We went to war in World War II to prevent a German superstate that ruled over the continent of Europe, and now we have the European Union, a German superstate ruling over the continent of Europe. But they're willing to issue bonds for themselves to lend money to themselves who don't need it, but they're not willing to actually, lend to the periphery countries, the ones that actually do need it. And it's all just so ridiculous. And that's why I have to just take a little bit of Schadenfreude, to use the German, to use the Deutsch, because their pain is my pleasure, right? When people live their entire lives and build their world on illusions and bullshit, I mean, I have to just at least give us a little bit of a chuckle on the inside, at very least, to see it all come crashing down. And yes, the virus is a tragedy, but far more than the virus is a tragedy is all of this just panic and the shutdown and all the rest. This virus and the whole shutdown is not... When the virus goes away and the shutdown is lifted, we're not just going to go back to things as they were. This has pricked the bubble, all right? This is a whole different thing. And it was already building. Something inevitably was going to do it. As all other market crashes, nobody ever predicts it, except for the people who see the structural problems inherent in the entire structure as it stands, right? If you don't see a problem with the stock market rising, 1 to 2 to 3%, or 1 to 2% per day for 11 years and never having a significant downturn, with just multiple expansion and no real increase in the underlying value of the businesses, it just... At some point, something has to prick the bubble, and this pricked the bubble. And that's why the Fed has gone full nuclear Rambo bazooka and is just firing money everywhere, just throwing dollars at everything that moves, including now a whole list of extra central banks. Soon, it'll be basically the entire world, except for, a few select countries, and that's going to be the de facto monetary empire reaching its goal of total control over the world's financial system. But that will also be the predicate for the global monetary reset, when this whole thing basically reaches its terminus and goes asymptotic as far as hyperinflation, and the entire system resets along the precious metals allocations. And there will probably be other factors, of course, but it will by default reset to the precious metals allocations. Those who have the gold will again make the rules, and the power of the central bank, backed up by 7 or so aircraft carriers and $800 billion a year in military supplies, it's just not going to continue that way anymore. And again, why Trump? Yes, Trump is not just some outsider who came into this because he wanted to pad his resume. Trump actually, as I don't want to, give the credit to the Q posts at this point, but the narrative that it underlies, I still believe to be fundamentally correct, that there are elements of society that have seen all of this corruption and deep state taking power. They've seen it coming, right? My grandmother was a very, very smart lady, Phi Beta Kappa, back, before most women were even allowed to go to college, and a lot of words that people would say today are racist and anti-Semitic, but damn was she smart. And I never really understood it as a kid. Why exactly was she, for a woman who is so smart, why does she have these convictions against these groups of people, right? I was still very liberal back in high school and whatnot. And we would make fun of her at the dinner table even, not me, but, my stepmom would. And, they just kind of, just this ridicule for these ancient beliefs of, taking care of your own, having some sort of, national or, tribal identity, basically a family identity. It's all just, the real nation is an extended family, right? A nation is different than a state, right? The Irish and Celtic nation, right? The Scottish nation, the English nation. When people say all you have to do is move inside of the borders of a country to become that nationality, that's ridiculous. And this communism has revealed its weaknesses. Outsourcing our supply chain has revealed its weaknesses, and now we're basically, if this bioweapon narrative is correct, which it appears to be, whether it was deliberate or accidental, it's still the actions taken in subsequent after the initial release show that we're almost the Cold War between the U.S. and China has now kind of entered a sort of new hot hybrid phase, and this is really going to lead to the final conclusion one way or another at some point, because they've run out of all the other narratives and excuses. And, it's funny that people thought all that Trump had going for him was the stock market, and now the stock market just totally collapses. Actually, it hasn't totally collapsed yet, but significant drawdown. 35% is pretty significant, and his approval goes through the roof because it's leadership that is the immutable, intangible quality that matters most. And people are starting to realize, especially independents and people who are just, regular Americans, even if they were liberal before, because they, were emotionally satisfied by that political position, they're realizing that leadership is what matters. And Joe Biden is just a rambling old moron, a rambling old corrupt, just demented moron. I mean, and he used to have some vitality to him. I remember when I was liberal enjoying Joe Biden, but that was a long time ago. And he's still enjoyable for other reasons at this point, because it's just a sad, sick form of entertainment. But, and Bernie's not much better. At least he can string together a coherent sentence. But people are realizing, day after day, that this is a crisis one way or another, and that basically it's the states that are doing the heavy lifting. Trump has got kind of a Confederate response. So, I don't see the medical fascism coming through Trump at this point, but it's very dangerous what people do when they lose control of their fear response, and the government does that in lockstep with them. And it leads to a lockstep scenario, as outlined by the Rockefeller Foundation many years ago, of basically using this medical pandemic viral pretext as Hello?
Are you driving still?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just reading articles and things, and I was going to share something else with you, because I find this all to be very interesting. You know how it's like only elderly people seem to be the ones getting really affected by it?
Yeah.
I just saw this study. I'll send it to you. It's like in a scientific journal, and it was among military personnel from 2017 to 2018. And they found that people who received the flu vaccine were 4 times more likely to be infected with viral respiratory infections.
Yeah, and there's actually also an article in January that said that this year's flu vaccine doesn't even match the flu that's out there. But they say, but get it anyway, it might help you.
I think it's interesting because elderly people are way more likely to get the flu shot than, I know now in California kids are mandated, but that was only like a year or two ago. Like most parents don't get their kids the flu shot. Even like parents who vaccinate usually skip the flu shot for their kids, usually.
Well, I know that it's definitely on the CDC schedule.
It is, but I think about people I know personally that maybe they do, but I feel like from at least people I see and know, the elderly are the ones who are a lot more likely. Even talking to my dad about who gets the flu shot, he's like, it might, the flu could kill you. And elderly people are kind of told that, like the flu could kill you if you get the flu shot. And I know people who vaccinate their kids, but they don't give them the flu shot. Maybe that has something to do with why it affects the elderly so much more, because they've all gotten the flu shot. And it is just having like a weaker system.
Well, yeah, it's basically, how many billions of people are completely toxified at this point, like any of the other viruses, like we were talking about before. It's going to affect people differently, and for, 95% of cases, it'll be, asymptomatic, but then it's those, most toxic, on the edge, on the margins, that basically have these catastrophic symptoms, and those are the ones that, of course, the spotlight focuses on.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that obviously go to the hospital.
Right. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that the study showed that you're 4 times more likely to catch a viral respiratory infection.
Then what?
Then if you hadn't received the vaccine.
Oh, then yeah, if you yeah, well, I mean, it weakens the immune system on a fundamental level. So even if you've got new antibodies, it's like, you know, it's like adding an accessory to a broken vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at my air freshener.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I got an air freshener and I've got spinners, but the engine's blown.
Yeah. Alright. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and maybe part of the equation of why kids aren't really affected as much.
Right. Well, but some might, because obviously they're being born with some amount of toxicity depending on the parents. But in general, yeah, they're going to be totally clean.
Yeah. That was so funny. Alright. Alright, Smiling. I love you.
Alright, I love you. Talk to you soon. Bye. And that's why I love Space Panther, because those are the conversations that we have, and you know, I never get tired of it, because we're in this journey together. And so anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's anything else I want to say. Yeah, basically what I said in that phone call was that, you know, with polio, 95% of cases are asymptomatic. So it's looking like something similar is playing out with this coronavirus COVID-19 thing, that the vast majority of people are going to be asymptomatic, totally healthy carriers, and that its only inevitable end game is to spread throughout the planet. And yes, we should take these steps as a society to mitigate the harm and protect those most at-risk groups, but otherwise shutting down society for the sake of these margins of society is ridiculous, and it's not feasible, and it cannot continue, as Trump and Devin Nunes and many other sensible, rational people are pointing out, right? When every 1% uptick in the unemployment rate leads to tens of thousands of suicides because of drug addiction and no economic opportunity and loss of hope, right? Are these deaths that we're supposedly preventing of coronavirus, worth the new deaths that will accrue as a result of basically shutting down everything that gives people joy and worth and sustenance in their lives? And we actually, our neighbor works at one of the major hospitals in the Sacramento area, and he said that it's just dead. They've got 140 ventilators, and they've only got basically 12 of them running. I think he said 30 of them, but only 12 are for coronavirus. And normally they have a lot more people in the ER. Normally they have a lot of people in hospital. Normally he said they get 10 near-fatal car crash patients per night, but they haven't had any of them because everything shut down. So it's very interesting that we're saving thousands of lives potentially across the nation, totally unrelated to coronavirus or any respiratory disease of any kind, but just by shutting down society, we have prevented all the deaths that are kind of built into the system and baked into the cake. And so again, this kind of, the spotlight may not be shining on it, but this whole thing is illustrating to people that kind of contrast and hypocrisy. At least the smarter, the clear-eyed ones among us, we can see like how many deaths were just baked into the cake of our society, of the transportation system and the culture that we have, and how many, young, old, middle people get sacrificed, just as the wheel turns and the great machine grinds on. So, it's that also belies another question. It's almost like the iRobot scenario is, if we're just to go by the metric of reducing deaths at all cost, then, why don't we just lock down society permanently? Why don't we just shut everything down? Because then nobody will be able to do anything, and so nobody will die, right? But that can't be the basis of our civilization. Maybe in Commie China, but not here in America. We were born in rebellion, and we cannot exist in a state of absolute risk mitigation. As Benjamin Franklin said, those who would trade liberty for security deserve neither liberty nor security and will have neither. So that's my message today, is that remember that your reaction to this is more important than anything, whether you are infected with coronavirus or influenza or stupidity or all the rest. It's stay clear-eyed, stay in your center, and basically, you know, stay prepared for whatever may come. And that includes the total apocalypse boogaloo scenario, and it also includes the V-shaped recovery, right? That's called plasticity and flexibility and adaptability, and it is the #1 determinant of survival and thrival in this world, and probably all other worlds as well. But we'll get to that by the end of this century, and that's another video. Anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy. Cheers.